Hi, everyone. We got a few people on here. Let me find David. There he is.
Oh
You
my
there?
God, I made you cry.
I almost, not you made me. Okay, these days it's super easy. I cried on Zoom the other day, but no, it's just it's just so great to talk to people, David, that are going through the same thing. To find out, we're not alone in this,
No,
and and it's just so comforting. So, yeah, of course you made me cry. What do you think?
but it's also kind of it's a curse as well because we really can't complain because there's way more people that are way worse off than we are. So kind of hard to complain when there's a whole bunch more people, even in a worse position, and we're all in the same boat anyhow.
Yeah. And I think that's what keeps us moving forward. So
Yeah.
is that, and I had shared with you, I started these Zoom calls, I think March 20th it was. And, uh, we thought, okay, a week. Okay. At first I thought it was going to be a one-off, and then a bunch of stuff happened that weekend. So we did the Monday, and then I was like, do you guys want to talk tomorrow? And then next thing you know, it's literally been every day, Monday through Friday for 5 weeks, and people are showing up. And sometimes we don't say anything. And sometimes we share personal stories. But I think just getting up and knowing that we're together helps us all
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
it's been
I,
fun to do these.
and I
Um,
appreciate this forum that you put together for these kind of conversations because they're more important than ever now.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. And obviously, we're feeling the pain here because we have this will be our biggest call yet. So I appreciate everyone who's here. Hi, everyone. Um, so we have some regulars on here. Hi, Lindsay. She's an event planner, wedding planner. She lives down in LA, David. Magnolia Event Design. She's
Good
born and raised here in
morning.
Santa Barbara. Andreka, all the way from Florida. Ellen Reed, catering company. Um, Dora from Warner Brothers Studios. Do you know Dora Olvera?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Tracy Morris, she's a floral designer, very talented, lives up in Buellton. She's been doing this here. Lonnie Bolinoff, I don't know if you remember Lonnie. You've met him a few times.
Yeah. So all over the board here, and
All over
and
the
all
board.
and somewhat all over the country. We even have Joel from Calgary on here.
Oh,
What up?
wow. Joel, hi. That's awesome. We have rental company, Nicole. She works for Bright Event Rentals.
Well,
We have, yeah, quite a few people, videographers, hair and makeup people, David. We got it all here. This is the best party in town right now.
woohoo.
Yeah, so for those of you guys that don't know, David Merrell, the amazing David Merrell, I've met you probably, gosh, I know it was in Dallas, so I can't, I think it was 7, 8 years ago at this point, and have been in awe of what you do, your company, your personality, everything since then. And David actually spoke last year because he talks at TSC special event and all these other shows about trends. So you came up to Santa Barbara and talked to us a little bit about trends in the event industry, and tell us a little bit more about you, your company, and we'll get started.
Yeah. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks so much for getting on today. My name is David Merrell. My company, AOO Events, is based in Los Angeles, California. We are an event design and production company. We actually just rebranded to a live experiential design company. Now we're rebranding again to virtual engagement strategies. So we're doing a complete shift right now in the effort of keeping ourselves in business. I've been in business now since 1989. So I actually started in a recession of the late 80s, early 90s. I started as a caterer and kind of grew into everything else. And at the end of the century, the beginning of the next one, I was 32 employees, and then 9/11 happened, and I had some amazingly profound changes that I had to make within my company. And then rebuilt again. And I know we're going to get a little bit more into that, so I'm not going into detail right now. But then I rebuilt back up under a new set of goggles and built my company back up. And then 2008 happened, and I had to retract again just to survive through that. And so I've been through a couple of these before. And as I was talking to you earlier, it's really changed my perspective on how I'm handling this time around versus I recall what my mindset was when this happened first time, which was 9/11, and the bomb dropped. Literally, the bomb dropped, and the bomb that was dropped in my company and the decisions I had to make. So, um, going through this again doesn't make it any easier. It just has changed my perspective and maybe prepared me a little bit more than I would have been prepared in the past. So, so hi.
Hi, welcome. Um, okay, so yeah, so 1989. That's an interesting point. I didn't know that. And for me, I started right around when I started my own company. I was working with another one right around when the market was going down, and I thought, what the hell am I doing? You started, and what were your thoughts?
89. Well, at the time, um, I didn't really think much about it. And in retrospect, it probably was the best time to start your company. I would say even now is the best time to start a company because you have a very low expectation of business right now. When I started my business in 1989, I had a very low expectation of business. So any business I was getting was a blessing. So I wasn't like getting hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars and all of a sudden it was swept away. So it was a good time to start it because my expectations were low. Uh, it's a very different thing once you have a massive overhead or an overhead that's quite large. And as an owner, you always feel responsibility. I do personally feel responsibility for all my employees, and not just my employees. I feel responsible for everybody that they have to put food in their mouth, their children, their dependents, their partners, their other halves. So that's a hell of a burden to have on your shoulders as an owner of a business. The reality on that is that you always have to make sure that you take care of yourself first. Because if you take your, it's like the masks that come down from the airplane when everything goes down. Put your mask on first and help others. Because if you don't put your mask on first, you're not going to be able to help others.
And I think the irony of this, we shared just a little bit right before, is that as event professionals, very rarely do we do that. We're always taking care of other people, taking care of the event, taking care of our clients and our customers. It's just an innate ability. We're in hospitality, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it tough even this time around.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to lead by example. You can't, if taking care of yourself is going out and buying a new Jaguar, that may not be the best message to send. You certainly have to take care of yourself and make sure you're going to survive, but you also have to lead by example. If they're going to feel the pain, you should feel some of the pain too. If you have to reduce salaries, then you should be reducing your salary as well and being part of the team. So, we talked about 9/11 briefly, and I'd like to go in a little bit more because it was a profound, in retrospect, very profound change. I had built up in a catering company to 32 employees. We had a cafe, and we worked our off-premise satellite kitchen from there. And when that happened, no one was partying, no one was doing anything, even social had cut out. So how was I going to even meet a payroll of that kind? And I had the one thing that I did right away is I freaked out. I got in bad moods. I wasn't very social with my friends. I kind of went into a cave and felt sorry for myself. And that was one of the things that I think I wish I would have had a handle on, but I don't know if I would. As a new 10 years in the business, as a new business owner, it was all about me and how it was happening to me. And I had to I internalized that too much. So if everybody learned something from this is that you cannot internalize this. And I'm actually taking a lot of steps to make sure that I keep my head on straight now. But back to 9/11. When that happened, I had to look at a lot of like how I was going to survive, and I had to actually start getting my hopeful thinking out of the way and get my practical thinking in the middle of this, and started thinking, what do I really want to do? And I kept thinking to myself, I can't stand the food business. I can't stand the fact that I'm eating everything and I'm gaining weight The food business, if there's any caterers here, is extremely subjective business. I can sit next to you and have the exact same meal, and I love it, and you hate it. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just the way it is. And I was like, I can't stand this business. And the only thing that I really enjoyed was the and I fortunately had a woman working with me at the time who was a brilliant designer. And I saw a possibility in that. I was like, you know what? I can do that with a very small footprint. I can come down to the size that might be able to get me through this. And so I dismantled my company. It was the hardest thing I ever did because all that obligation I felt towards every one of the employees and every mouth they had to feed was like a knife through my heart every time I had to make that decision. Unfortunately, I had to make the decisions, and there was actually no way around that. In retrospect, it was the right decision to make because I actually survived, number one. I actually came out of it with a new perspective, and I actually shot off in another direction. It's when my company changed branding, my clientele changed, everything. I was actually called, at the time, my company's name was An Original Occasion. See, when I started in business, I want to be called Original Occasion, but when I started in business, how did you find a caterer? Through the phone book. And if you weren't an A, a B, or a C, you were never going to be picked up because by then they'd gone up. So I put the A in front, An Original Occasion, to make sure it's at the beginning of the phone book. When 9/11 happened, and I decided to cut my catering and just keep the decor, my clientele changed. I started going into ballrooms and working in ballrooms and everywhere else, places I would never go as a caterer before. And so I had to rebrand because now I was dealing with corporations versus people's backyard parties or weddings or the social part of the business. And I know I'm speaking to a fairly large social events group here. So I had to retool for myself to survive, number one, and to actually feel excited about the product I was dealing with because I was actually trapped in catering. In my mind now, I was trapped in a world that I didn't really like, but I built it up and I was really good at it. And this actually allowed me to release all the stuff that I didn't like and retain the things I do. That's the lesson. That's one of the biggest lessons I have moving forward now is, am I going to, if and when I come out on the other side of this, and I say if because there's a lot of unknowns here, what would my company look like? What would I want to be known for? What would I want to sell? And so that conversation in my mind and with my employees right now is the forefront of everything we're doing. We're not talking about what's going to happen in 2 months. Are we going to potentially open? What would that look like? Would we have to have Purell stations at the front of every entrance? Would we have to make sure everyone's 6 feet apart and distancing? We can't make those decisions right now because that's something that's going to be dictated by our local governments. Unfortunately, that's not being dictated at the federal level, but we're seeing the reasons why that's a problem now. But I kind of lost my thought. I went off on a tangent. I was going to get back on the point, and then I forgot what the point was. What was the point? Where was I going?
Well, we were sort of just still dabbling a little bit in 9/11 and how it changed that. You were a caged animal, basically. You were a caged animal that allowed you to get unleashed.
Yeah. There was nothing about that period of time when I was going through those that was comfortable. In fact, it was a knife through the heart. But in retrospect, it was exactly what I had to do to survive and evolve. I would say the same thing now. Nothing we're going to do, no decisions we're going to make is going to be comfortable now. Nothing's going to be comfortable. How do you want to look on the other side? And can you make it to the other side? And that's the calculation we all have to be making right now. Can we make it? Or do we have to make changes to make sure that we make it to the other side? Or is this the time to reinvent yourself?
Yeah. And I think that's what we're all realizing, right? We're coming out of this quicksand. Like you said, you need a minute to kind of regroup and then focus.
Yeah.
The sooner you're ready, the better.
When I want to correct one thing, I don't think we're coming out of the quicksand. I don't think we've gone far enough into quicksand yet. I think even though there's obviously a lot of anxiety around reopening, we all want to get back to business. We all want to be doing something. We all want to make money. We all want to put food on the table. But the reality is we're not there yet. and I don't think we're going to be there for a while. We had the mayor push back, or not the mayor, the governor pushed back in California to May 15th. I would not be surprised if we hear soon it's going to be pushed to May 30th. I wouldn't be surprised if it got pushed again after that. And the reason why they're doing it is they're kind of taking a temperature, so to speak, and seeing how it's going as well. Doesn't appear to be improving at this moment, and it's going to be a longer haul. So, okay, what can we do to, number one, keep ourselves sane? Number two, plan for a future that we have no idea what it's going to look like. And therein lies the tricks.
So having talked about the past, for me also, I relate a lot to 9/11. It changed a lot of what I did. I had just started working for a company. I had just moved to Santa Barbara. I had to lay people off for the first time ever. I had to get unpaid. And I admire what you said. Like, if you're doing pay cuts, take a pay cut yourself. And that's something that did happen. It was a huge learning lesson for me. Obviously the market, that's when I started when the market crashed, 2010, was when I started my business, which, like you, interestingly enough, I started at the bottom. There were no expectations. So you can only go up from there. What's happening now, though, so let's talk a little bit about present, is a couple things that I want to talk about. One of them is in the news, and I know that it's been very worrisome for our community here. You see it in the New York Times. I mean, literally every newspaper article, it talks about how the event industry is in shambles. It will never come back. There's negative news about it. What are your thoughts?
It will come back. I think the lessons that we as an industry learned from 2008 2009 economic downturn was that there's a massive relevancy to our industry. I remember the conversation at the time was, oh my God, are we going to be replaced by virtual meetings? It's never going to happen. And we actually emerged out of that. And by the way, I'm speaking from a corporate lens and not the social lens. We emerged out of that with the idea that, face-to-face meeting was more valuable than ever, that it's never going to go away, that it is in human nature that we have to meet, because that's the way we're motivated. That's the way we have transformative thinking along that way. Because of that, I don't think that lesson's going to ever go away. We will want to meet again. Now, when is that going to happen? Not to be a negative now, but I don't think we're going to see even a semblance of going back to normal until there's a vaccine. Because if you think about it, even if there's social distancing, even if there is, okay, by August, we can start having events again, but only 50 people or only 100 people can get together, and you have to be 6 feet apart. I can tell you from personal experience, if I was sitting in a room with even 20 people and we had to be 6 feet apart, my mind the entire time in that room would be, even with a mask on, who's going to sneeze? Am I too close to somebody? I wouldn't be able to be present there. So I think it's in our realistic thinking on this would be is that we're going to have to expect that this industry is not going to allow us to meet, to celebrate, to get together anytime soon. I think there's a different set of plans or a different set of lenses that you should look at this from if you're on the social side versus the corporate side. I think social will come back faster. I think corporate's going to have a nail through the heart for a while. Can you even imagine? I'm talking with some of my clients now for events they're doing in November. Because I just yesterday had a 3,500 person event in Vegas canceled on me. Kills me because it was money I knew I had and I knew was going to go away. The interesting thing now is that client is actually talking about, well, we'd like to do something virtual. We'll get back to that in a second. My clients in November are really starting to, wonder whether they can meet together. What would it look like? Will we be able to have social distancing? How many people will be able to be in the room? What kind of health protocols we're going to have? Us trying to spin our wheels and think what that's going to look like is silly right now because nobody knows. And if we think we're going to be able to dictate that, that's just ludicrous because it's going to take a much higher level of trial and error to see, we open up Georgia next week. Let's look, or this week, let's look and see what happens. If the spike starts going back up, we're going to go back into the rabbit hole for another 2, 3 more months, and it's going to be even more of a lockdown than before. So I'm a little nervous about these things that are starting to open up. But in the future, business, it will come back. What would it look like once there's a vaccine and there's no chance that someone could die from this? Because if you're going to get sick, that's one thing. If you get sick but you'll recover, that's one thing. That would open up. So it is important, I think, right now to look at these, not at hydroxychloroquine, which the most recent results that came in yesterday, that it's not necessarily promising. But there's some other drugs. If there are ways that once you got this, you could at least recover, that'll start opening things up. But once there's a vaccine, it'll open up completely. Face-to-face business will never go away. Face-to-face meetings and celebrations will never go away, because it is in our nature to get together and celebrate. And I got to tell you, I'm having a Zoom meeting every week, or a Zoom cocktail hour every week now with my family. It's more time I've ever spent with my family than ever, but it's not the same of being with them and hugging them and holding them. And so that's never going to change. Our human nature is always going to be, I miss just kind of hanging with my friends and clinking a drink and giving them a hug. And, that's the stuff that's not going to go away. So we got to hold in the fact that that's not ever going to go away. What can we do right now to keep ourselves in business? What can we do with virtual products or other ways of celebrating to keep us in business? In the wedding world, I have a brother coming up with having a wedding in August, and he hasn't really changed the plans yet. And I just posed the question to him yesterday. I said, let me ask you this. Kathy, his wife, and my brother Dan, how are you guys going to feel putting your parents on an airplane in August? How are you going to feel putting anybody anybody who has an increased risk on a plane to come out and celebrate in August? Maybe October if things start to get better. But, so I've started talking about what would a virtual wedding be? It's unfortunate. You could wait till this is all over a year from now and have that big wedding with everyone celebrating. But you really want to wait that long to get married? It is the set of circumstances we have. So what could we offer as a wedding industry to create a virtual wedding right now? Maybe it is 15 people, the closest family getting together for a meeting, and then you create a really great production Zoom thing so all the people that couldn't be there could be part of the wedding as well. Maybe there's a social celebration that happens afterwards with that is part Zoom and part some people together. And then if you really feel like there's going to be, you want to get everyone together for cause for celebration, when things open up, plan a party that doesn't necessarily have a ceremony around it. That's just a party to celebrate the whole thing. And that's the just suggestion I'm giving my brother right now. It's like, it's either that or push the wedding back for a year or 6 months in hopes that, maybe there will be some kind of advanced treatment or something going on, so you would feel comfortable putting your parents on a plane and coming out there. But I think that they're so disappointed with this answer, but it's reality. And there's nothing, and just because we're the ones that have to deliver the news and the reality check doesn't mean we're the bad guy. I do seem to apologize a lot lately in these conversations because I'm spending a lot of time talking from a pragmatic standpoint and not a hopeful standpoint. I actually don't plan my business now on what I hope is going to happen. I'm planning my business on a worst case scenario.
Agreed. A couple things. I'm also the naysayer, David. A lot of times I'm a realist.
Yeah.
I'm Italian European. My parents raised me to be this way, but so it's all their fault, as you know. But and me too. I spend so much more time with them virtually, which is amazing. What a gift. It's interesting, that physical connection. I'm actually stay at home. I have 6 little cottages that I live in, and 3 of them are people that work 9 to 5 jobs. They're just working from home now. They don't have the same stress that I do as a self-employed person in the event industry. But something that I thought was really cool, one of them works for this local company, and yesterday they had their team building. They had scheduled a team building day. Obviously wasn't exactly what they had anticipated. And what they did is they had a local coffee company deliver fresh orange juice, fresh coffee, and pastry to that marketing team, or that team of, I think it was 40 people. So everyone got a delivery that morning before the Zoom call, cheers to each other. And then she had told me, and then it happened to be on, I think, Trevor Noah last night, that all of a sudden through the Zoom call, had I known earlier, I would have arranged it. Now they have animals show up on the Zoom calls, kind of like a little, uh,
Yeah.
breaker. So it's these creative things. It's really about getting your brain into the creativity of what we thrive
Yeah.
on.
Well, it's really interesting because really all the tools for us to create a meaningful virtual experience, whether it's a wedding or a corporate event, we already have. We have all of them, and they're getting better. We start talking about the technologies that exist. There's so many technologies that exist right now that can keep us engaged. We just, as a live events industry or as a wedding industry, have not used them that way. um, a simple idea. In the social world, they're still using invitations, mailed invitations, most versus, and the mailed invitations used to be extremely elaborate, and they were really setting the tone. And most of the elaborate invitations nowadays are based on the ego of the person spending the money. Is like, I want to set a tone. But there was a value to that really elaborate invitation because it set the tone for a transformative or some kind of meaningful movement or engagement with whoever's sending the message. So why are we introducing that back into our clients? Because I think that is a meaningful way, something that sets the tone for them. And then before a meeting, that's a Zoom meeting or however you're setting it up, why not some kind of virtual swag, just like you mentioned? Send them a Postmates card and say, look, here's $100 to go out and buy something so you can have it. We can all have a meal at the same time and break bread together. Whether they use it or not, it's a very thoughtful thing to do. And there are ways to still touch everybody on this group. If we knew who they're coming immediately, we could have made them excited even more before. We could have got them even more excited just before we went on. We could have had ways of engaging them while they're on, like exclusive concerts or a TED Talk or something that's just for them, because the host is still making it special. You may not like the fact that it's virtual, but none of us have a choice right now. But there are ways as an industry we can suggest to our clients to still keep people engaged, still keep people excited, and show them that we care about them, even if it's not as good as face to face. That's one of the things that we're actually coming up with. We've been working on my team. I have not reduced any salaries. I have not furloughed everybody. We are praying that the second round PPP we're going to get, because that's very crucial for some of my existence here. But they're working on what we're calling virtual engagement strategies. Every AV company in the world is coming out with a live streaming service. We all had that to begin with. Every AV company had a live streaming service. But what makes it different? What are the enhancements around? So what are the thoughtful things that you can do to actually, as best you can, touch them like you would if they were face to face? And there's a whole bunch of strategies, like I just mentioned, like, going back to really nice invitations or something like that, that you can touch them. Getting the gift. One of my favorite things in the world is getting the gift I didn't know was coming and being able to open that box. We got to bring that kind of stuff back. The premiums, the virtual swag, those types of things, they all exist in our toolbox. It's just, how are we using them to still create an experience that our hosts can extend to their guests?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a friend of mine from college have delivered yesterday 3 bottles of wine, local wine. I mean, what a great gift, not just to me, but also to the local community, which I know is hurting here as well.
Great message you're sending, because you're buying local, you're giving back, and of course put that in there because that's giving back, and that's a great message. And then also, it's also getting that personal gift. There's nothing better than a personal gift. If I can't meet in person, if I can't fly to Orlando or I can't fly to wherever to see these people in person, why not spend a little money if you're hosting all this stuff on sending a gift that's meaningful, that ties back to the reason for the celebration or the couple? or the brand?
Of the brand. And let's talk a little bit about that. So we've talked a little bit about the present. What about what advice for the future? Okay, and I can re-give these questions if they're too quick, but for the future, we have some people that have large companies, some people that are more solopreneurs. What advice do you have for them? And what's going to make someone a winner out of this and not come out a winner out of all of this?
I don't know if I can answer that except for the lens of my own, what I'm doing with myself. Because what I would do is not going to be right for someone who's like yourself, who's working on your own, or someone who has just a few employees. And I certainly wouldn't pretend to know what to tell someone who has 50 employees and the overhead way bigger than mine. But I can tell you what I'm doing. Some of the lessons I had learned in 9/11 in 2008 was that I should not have any debt, and I have no debt. I was also fortunate to have a very profitable year last year, so there's a lot of cash in the bank. Every single year, there has been a profitable year. I go back to my banks and I say, can I increase my line of credit? So since 2008, every year, I've been increasing my line of credit. I've never used it. I always have it there as a pad because I always want to make sure that I have enough cash to go for 6 months in some kind of catastrophic reason with, to keep myself in business if no money was coming in. So those are, first I'm very well leveraged. And if you're not leveraged, if you are collecting money in deposits now to pay for your payroll this week for future business, because that's the cash flow situation, I can't even talk to that because you're all going to have to make some hard decisions on that. But if you have flexibility, then you have to make this flexibility and you have a little bit of breathing room. My next calculation is, okay, can I get PPP? Because if I can get PPP, that covers 2 months. That gives me a 2-month pass to kind of look into the future and see by end of May where things are going to go. Because if we're in the same conversations by end of May than we are right now, then this is not looking good. I'm hoping that everyone starts to get their shit together and start getting on the same page. I get the political fighting back and forth because no one knows really what's happening. And someone's going to say, we're short. We don't have enough stuff. And we're going to say it's coming. The reality is that we're all in that same boat. We're not, but if we're having those same conversations a month from now, that would be alarming. I'm hoping there's going to be advancement because if you look at where we were a month ago and where we are now, I think there is advancement. So I'm making calculations, and that calculation is, are we getting to a point where there's going to be a conversation about getting back together? Because when we open back up, it's not going to be about events. It's going to be about, can we get the restaurants open and can people sit in those restaurants? Okay, maybe 30% of the people can sit in those restaurants. Can the bars open back up? Can I go get a haircut? I just want to get a haircut. Those are the essential services that are going to have to come back first before we ever get to can we celebrate way down the totem pole events company or events industry. It's not going to happen right now. So when is it when we're going to be able to start having those conversations about, what will it look like when we reopen? I'm spending a lot of energy and time looking at Major League Baseball, the National Football League, NAACP, all those colleges like Ohio State, who has 100,000 people a weekend in a stadium, they get a whole bunch of their money and revenue from all those people sitting in one space. What are those people talking about? How are they going to even let in 50,000 people in that? Or is it going to be a moot conversation and we're going to have to put everything on TV, and just get the TV rights for a while and then kind of hunker down and find our way through it? I know I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but those are the things that I'm looking at right now as clues on how we can open up. I still think the live events industry, I call live events industry, which is weddings and social, is still having those silly conversations like, what's it going to look like when we open? Are we going to be able to not do double-sided buffets anymore? It's like, we can sit here and think about this shit all day long, but it's not up to us how this is going to be dictated. It's going to be dictated by the people that run the government. They don't have the answer yet, and with rightfully so. They're just trying to get a company that's not getting sicker and sicker right now. So it's a long run thing. And I think it's a series of calculations. I have, a by end of May, I'll be able to get a nice snapshot and go, okay, I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe if I just reduce salaries a little bit, I can make it through. It's a calculated thing for me. Or maybe, yeah, this is the same conversation. And now that Georgia opened up, we're seeing more infections. Now we're closing down again. You're going to have to make another check in August and June and July and continue to think, can you stay open or not? And I don't have the answer for any of it. I don't even have the answer for myself. I have put a bunch of stuff in place. The PPP is very important for me. I'm also applied for the SBA financial disaster loan, which is a great loan because that doesn't have to be paid back for 30 years and it's 1% interest. It's like that's the best money you can have because over 30 years I could get that back. And I'm trying not to tap into the money I made or the line of credit. That's after these things go away. Because I'm looking at what is the longest period of time I can go with no money coming in, with everything in there. And at the end of that, will business come back? Or will I be in so much debt that I'm not going to be able to marry out of it? These are the calculations that I have to make. And I think this is the same calculations everyone else is going to have to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're running a larger business, self-employed, looking at those financials is so important. Getting that PPP loan, staying on track with your financials. That's really like one of the primary things that we look at.
Yeah.
Obviously, health, mental, emotional, physical, like we were talking about.
That's one thing that you and I talked about at the beginning, and I think that's the biggest. I think it's one of the biggest reasons why I'm weathering this better than I have before. Since I've been through this a few times before, the one thing I actually know for certain, and I'm also a student of the law of attraction, that I genuinely believe I'm going to be fine on the other side of this. I have no idea what I'm going to look like. So I'm more willing to get in the boat and kind of float along and steer it when I see an opportunity than I am to freak out and try to paddle upstream. Because there's no way if we try to paddle upstream right now, you're going to be exhausted by the end of it.
I thought it was the Milagro tequila over your right shoulder that was keeping you weathering the storm. So
no, it's the
other side.
It's the Crown Royal oil on that side. Yeah, you can see I have my bar, and which is actually in my kitchen, set up. I think I'm potentially becoming an alcoholic, but I'm not willing to say.
I think we all are.
I have a huge lemon tree in the back, and I've been picking lemons every day, and I make best lemon drop. And so I find myself working out to stay in shape so I don't gain the weight from alcohol.
Yeah, keeping your brain on straight. I think too, on the mindset aspect, on one of these Zoom calls, we had a planner who, and for those of you that are on, I don't know, everyone's gone through different phases of these moments in time. And what do we do? And the panic and the fear of, okay, well, we're going to postpone our clients through to July. And then, okay, so July is not going to happen. They're going to postpone through the fall. And recently I had someone say, there may not be anything this year. And I said, reality is yes, that there is nothing this year. And this person said, so I'm just going to book these people. I'm just going to call it a wash in 2020, put them into 2021. And all of a sudden, this person felt better. She's like, there's just a burden off my shoulders because now there's that uncertainty is gone. There's more of a looking forward versus paddling or, trying to stay afloat and having a focus and focusing on, okay, we're booking things 18 months out instead of trying to save the next 6 months.
Well, I think it's great that anybody would actually have the power to move the client to next year. Because all my clients are making their own decision and deciding for me, do we want to push a wedding until fall or do we want to push our meeting? We had one client that canceled for a May job and they've rebooked in end of August, 1st of September because they didn't want to lose the money from the deposit going into the hotel, so they rebooked. But I already know that they're not going to be comfortable doing that. So we're going to come up with some solutions for them for the fall. But I am a firm believer that we're not going to see this come back this summer. I doubt it's going to come back in the third quarter. And maybe if we've got some kind of medicinal regimen that tamps down the COVID-19, um, and it's feeling safer to be out, we'll see some movement in the fourth quarter. But again, would you be comfortable right now? Right now, your answer is going to be very different than 2 months from now. Would you be comfortable standing in a group of 50 people and celebrating if there's a possibility you can go right back in the hospital again and not have the proper testing, not have all the things we need to actually identify who can get sick and who can't get sick? So I see there's some really good questions coming in now. I'd love to open it up for everyone else to ask questions, especially the one to see Elisa McKenzie.
Yeah, so Elisa asked, do we know, even with the limits on number of gatherings, whether 10 or 40 or whatever, does that include vendors that need to be there too? 100 people would be 70 guests and 30 vendors, etc. So what is that count of people?
And the answer is no one has that answer. No one has an answer, unfortunately. And this is why I just wish all the political jogging around and all that stuff would just stop and they'd all get on the same page and start coming up with some task force for answering those questions. We're not going to know for a while what that answer is. We could plan for that, but I would guess if they're saying 50 people in a room, that would be 50 people in a room, regardless of whether they're a vendor or a guest or whatever. I'd love to be at a party where there are 70 guests and 30 vendors. That'd be a good party.
Which takes us to the next question. This is Kimberly. I hope I don't butcher your last name. Bone, B-A-U. Anyway, B-E-A-U-N-E.
From Toronto. Hey, Kim.
Hey, Kim. David, do you think leaders in our industry can have a voice in how things open up? Can we get a seat on the table to use our knowledge and expertise in managing spaces, moving people to help the process?
I'm in a weekly meeting with these industry leaders council that's talking about that exact same thing. And I was sitting, this is me being a negative Nell again, sitting in that conversation to go, it's talking about the future of best billing practices and whether we can be involved and increase our lobbying. The answer is we should have been having these conversations all along, and we have been having those conversations all along. I know they're coming to the forefront now because we're all desperate. But the reality is coming up with a plan for better lobbying right now is going to probably fall in deaf ears because right now we're all trying to survive. This is a conversation we were supposed to be having. We have been having best billing practices, lobbying, and it's a conversation we absolutely have to have on the other side of this. But the reality is lobbying actually stepped up after 2008, 2009. We were all worried, oh my God, we're not going to be able to meet anymore. It's not appropriate because the optics of that. We've already started, the voice has gotten louder that it's important to have human communication, face-to-face meetings. And I do think it's important for industry leaders to get together and talk, but I think it would be way more practical to figure out a conversation where how can we survive through this financially, mentally, physically, right now. Conversation may be very different in 3 months, and we start to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Kim, I hope that answered your question, but that's not the most practical or uplifting answer.
Well, I think, just to kind of piggyback on that, there's bigger fish to fry than private events. Private events are not something on the forefront on people's minds in general. I don't think the government understands that. When we've heard them talk about events, they are thinking the football stadiums and the super large scale, not
casinos, hotels, tourism industry. Those are the ones. That's our voice right now. We just happen to be subset vendors of that hospitality industry. So there is a lobbying going on. Yeah.
And there's education, a lot of education to be had there. Yeah, John from JSH said big concerts. Exactly. There's education because we fall into this caveat as smaller events, weddings, social, 150 or so, that is not seen. People don't understand what we do. Definitely politicians, the government. It's not really a conversation right now. So what else? Um, agree to see what MLB, what sports do that's big. So agreed. I
That's
think
huge. I mean, that's a telltale because the amount of money lost there, you can't but help. They have major, powerful lobbyists trying to get their voices heard as well. They're in the same boat we are. Until we come up with a set of rules as to how people can meet, they have no more power than anybody else does as to when they can open their stadiums up.
curious, David, did you see the interview with the mayor of Las Vegas and
I
Anderson
did.
Cooper?
I did. I did. I I was I was a little bit mortified at her response, because and it's Vegas is a petri dish. Exactly what he said. You know, you go there, you have fun, and then you get on a plane and you go to other parts of the world. So if we, you know, and I know that all the answers are based on they want to get open, they don't want to lose their business, but we cannot be thinking that way anymore.
Absolutely. So I think you were saying you had an event that was supposed to be in Vegas that canceled. Was it Vegas? So
Yes,
let's
yes.
just say they can do it. They can do it next week or whenever in a couple months when they were planning on doing it. 3,500 people. What would you say to that?
Do you feel comfortable doing it? Do you feel comfortable flying people from all over the world into one location and then flying back in a plane? Because it's really the responsibility of the host, whether it's a bride and groom or it's a corporation. That would be what I said to them. This particular client, they called me yesterday or the day before, and they let me know that this wasn't moving forward, which I was bracing for the call anyhow. And they said exactly what I expected them to say. Is that we are now searching for ways to make this virtual. The reality is, in the corporate world, corporations still have to get their branding out. They still have to motivate. They still have to keep their people engaged and involved in their brand and their messaging. So we have, as a live events industry, every tool that's available to us right now, and it may require a little bit of education on some of our parts. Like I've spent a lot of time in technology right now. We have every tool we have to engage them as best we can if we have to meet virtually. And I think I would give the same advice to everyone in the social business. If you can't meet right now, do you want to make a calculated decision to open at a future time, knowing that that may have to be canceled soon? Or do you start planning something that's virtual? Or do you just push it to a time where you could potentially meet again?
And I think too, one of the things that maybe we didn't talk about, I saw it personally with 9/11 was, it took a hit on the finance, on corporate finance, corporations. They were laying people off, and they were saying, I can't do an incentive travel. I can't do 500 people at this resort and three waves for a Xerox per se. Uh, anymore, A, and then B, locally companies that were laying people off or had to lay people off because of it. And they're like, we're not going to have a holiday party. We just, furloughed 20% of our employees. So it goes even beyond the virus, right? It's the
That's,
financial
that's the
impact.
one thing we haven't talked about yet. That's the one thing we haven't talked about yet. And that's more on the corporate side than anything else. Once we're all safe, we can all meet again. What business? Our industry is based on the disposable income of corporations. So if everyone's having to contract, corporations may not have any money to actually spend the elaborate amount of money they spend again for a while because they're going to have to build back up. So that's something to also put in the calculation. Same thing with weddings. People aren't going to have the money. Are they going to be able to spend twice as much now when a lot of their savings is going into just surviving and staying afloat?
And there's also the other side of it. I mean, there are people, who are 9 to 5ers and they're still working and they can still plan their wedding. Couples that can push through have already saved for that. There's all different walks of life. I remember personally doing nonprofit events and working temporarily for a nonprofit company right around the stock market crash. And this gal, so this goes back to something you were saying, this gal came in and did corporate training to tell us essentially, and I was starting out my company, but she came to tell us that nonprofit events are going to be no more. They're a waste of money, and the money needs to go back to the, the the purpose of the nonprofit itself. And I started crying. Imagine that. I started crying in that meeting because I was like, what the heck? I'm starting my company right now and it's toast. But there's something to be said about nonprofit events did not go away. They do raise money. They do bring people together. There is that emotional immersion connection that you can't do otherwise.
There's following along that, the Tammy just put something up there and said larger corporations are not interested in doing it, or her clients are not interested in doing events online or virtual. Neither am I. But what else are we faced with? So the question to my corporations is it okay if you push any messaging, any branding, any connection with these people off for a year? Or do you feel like maybe there's some kind of strategy we should use right now to keep connected with people while we're waiting for this all to pass? Some people will say, nope, I don't want to do it until it's live again. To me, my first thought on a reaction like that is, well, you're kind of pouting, because unfortunately, this is where we're at. We can't meet together. So do you still have a message you need to get out? Do you still have a celebration that you want to happen? If you do, what are the alternatives other than virtual? Because there is none. So it's either do nothing or do it virtual.
Nicole from Bright Event Rentals is asking you, David, in your opinion, do you think smaller markets like Santa Barbara may rebound with events more quickly or slowly than larger markets like LA, San Francisco, Las Vegas?
I don't think there's any difference, because if you're just looking at California alone, Santa Barbara is not going to open when LA is still having cases, because everyone's in everyone's backyard. So I think the rules are going to be the same, maybe more like state by state, because I'm sure whatever's happening in Arkansas is very different than what's happening here in California. But regionally, I don't think there's going to be some cities that open up faster and relax their restrictions more than others. It just doesn't seem possible to me.
For me, I think on the social side, my thoughts are, Nicole, that we are driving distance from from LA, from San Francisco. Once things do start opening up, maybe people will drive. They decide they may have gone internationally or nationally to have a social gathering, but because they can drive to Santa Barbara and it feels like a destination, that could, but I don't think it's going to make a huge impact.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a difference. Whatever's happening in Santa Barbara will also happen in LA, will also happen in San Diego, will also happen in Palm Springs, and one will happen mutually exclusive before the other.
Ellen, she works for Pure Joy Catering here locally. Have you considered, David, doing multi-day events for corporate for larger guest counts, breaking them up, say 500 people to 100 people over 5 days? Has that come up?
It comes up all the time with, I spent a lot of time in the incentive industry, and these incentive programs they built, they may have started with 300 people and now they're 400 people, now they're 500, and they have a problem putting them in hotel rooms because the hotels aren't big enough. So as they naturally increase, we're seeing them broken up into segments, and there's actually more purchase power in that, because if you have booked 200 rooms over 2 weeks, same number of room nights, but you can share resources, all the other stuff that happens behind it. I think there is value to that. I also think that if you're doing something virtual, it may be better to keep it small so you can reach out and touch more personally everybody that's on that virtual meeting. But you could also do the same kind of virtual event for 500 people. The scale on virtual and streaming services, on virtual services, is exponential. It's not like, I got to spend time. I could not spend time with everybody on this call. There's no way I could do that. So what does it matter if it's 50 people or 300 people in my mind? In fact, I think when I'm talking to our clients, I'm going to suggest that, why don't we create one event? Because right now, a lot of these corporations, I have 1,800 people going into San Diego. One of the considerations they have is, the attrition fees and cancellations. I have to fly everybody in. I have to feed them all the time. If I can get rid of those expenses, because I can rebook. I don't have to book the flights. I don't have to pay for the hotel. I mean, to pay for their food. I will have to pay a penalty for the hotel. Could we take that money and touch them a different way? The best way to do that would be to create one streaming service. Or one particular event. If it's 2 or 3 days, maybe breakouts that happen at different times. But I think that there is a strategy that you can go about doing virtually and still keep everyone touched.
And I think it
Thank
goes
you.
back to the original conversation of we have to continue. Things are changing, will continue changing. We can't worry about them. We can't dictate things, but how are we going to use our creativity to still be able to do events and create that experience for our clients?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so Tammy, sorry, I missed your question. Tammy asked, has anyone here sent their information to local media outlets to offer themselves for comments or stories about our industry? And that also goes back to just this negative news about, how we're keeping deposits and what a terrible industry we are, and all of that. My personal opinion, negative news creates positive news, and it allows us a voice to talk about what we're doing versus just hearing the consumer side.
Yeah. You'd have to open that one up to everybody else. I haven't heard a lot of negative news except for individual conversations with clients who don't want to pay their deposits. And that's calculated. We have one client right now that signed a contract. Um, we started the work. We're halfway through the project, um, and now they don't want to pay for anything because we didn't deliver. It's like, it's an education process for their clients to say, look, really 90% of our work, what we do is in the first weeks. It's not once we get on site because everything we did to prepare for that day is done ahead of time. And so it's an education process. It's actually the best thing I can offer is that when you're talking to clients, start talking about the process, not the product. If you talk about the process and everything it takes for us to do what we do to get it there, they'll understand why. There's a big conversation about should we start getting deposits up front for work we've done. There's a lot of valid conversations around
Yeah, that is something that's come up. Scared clients, they're trying to change our contracts. They're afraid to put in as much of a deposit in there. What do you say to that when clients fear based, regardless if it's because of this? It's always happened where we have clients who want to change our contracts, much more so now. What are your thoughts or words of wisdom there, David?
that. Every one of those conversations is a calculated conversation. Is this someone how hard nosed you are depends on how much you really the work you did. If you're trying to save money because you're in desperation, or you're trying to grab on every piece of money in desperation, then you're thinking about right now and not the future of working with them or the bad press or PR that could come from you holding on to something when it's this is a really tough question. And for me, it's kind of like offering solutions. My client comes to say we want to cancel. It's like, okay, so we do have this cancellation policy. It's in effect, and a lot of our clients are like, look, I will take, I'll take half my cancellation, even though at this point I can take all of it. If you push to another date, come up with a negotiation, come up with a solution for that client. If you can come up with a solution, it might be a little easier pill to swallow.
I go back to exactly that. I go back to my hotel days. I used to work for Four Seasons, where you're taught from a very young age when you first start, you do not say no. That was what I was taught at 21 years old. You don't say no to your customers. That's what they're known for. But there's got to be a time where you say no, and you're like, no, there is no room for you to check into, right? But how do you go about that? You offer them two solutions. Like, I'm sorry, the room's not available right now. Can I buy you a cocktail at the bar? And I'll hold your luggage, or would you like to go down to the spa? That way you're giving them a little bit of control and, you know, trying to take care of things.
You're offering a solution. You're being fair. It's about being fair. And if they're not being fair with, it's a two-way street. If you're being fair with them and they're not being fair with fair with you, it's important for you to point that out. And you have to do that in a diplomatic way.
Tammy jumped on here. She said, we've had to be the mediator between venues and vendors and the clients. And we've been able to help them agree on the contract points during COVID. Tammy, is that for future contracts or for contracts that were already in place? I'm curious.
And that's great because you're actually part of the solution. You're there as part of their team creating the solution for their client. That's exactly what you should be doing.
Yeah, already in place. What about future contracts and those people that do want to change them?
What about, say that again?
What about for future business and future contracts and clients who do want to change the contract, the terms, something like that?
Well, if it's future business and they want to change, you can just present your terms to someone. If they want to change your terms, that's part of negotiation. I would think at this point we are already thinking of, the client comes to us and says they want to do a job in October. But from a corporate standpoint, they say, I want 3 ideas and 3 of these. Like, look, if I open these doors, I have people that are not being paid right now, or people on reduced salary. You're asking us to do a lot of work up front with no guarantee. How about if you're really wanting to go forward with this, we establish some kind of fee-based system. It's going to take 10 hours to put these ideas together for you, and you pay for it, and just pay for that right now. That will be folded into the event if you happen, but you have to understand that we're all in the same boat, and we can't just work for free anymore.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. I think we're out of questions here, unless any last questions before we kind of
One of
close
us
our.
typing something quite going feverishly, typing something there.
Jeremy, I don't see couples who we service, quote unquote, wanting to go a virtual route because of what makes a medium large wedding meaningful is people being in one physical space. If these
Mhm.
things don't improve by early fall, I see very small, intimate, or postponing to 2021 as more of what we'll see. Just a thought.
I agree. I agree. There's a huge disappointment in not gathering and celebrating together. The hard choice is going to be: do you push it? Do you create a smaller group that's now okay because things have opened up and 50 people are allowed in? Or do you keep people part of the celebration and offer them a different way of being part of your special day? None of those decisions are are attractive. That's unfortunately, again, this is us being the solutions to their problems. We're not delivering the bad news. We're being the ones giving them solutions to the problems.
I have a question for you. What are you telling your employees right now? What are your words of wisdom to your team?
Um, we've actually gone to the point, about a year ago we decided to change, and I think I even talked about this when I met with you up in Santa Barbara. We've been changing ourselves into um, an agency model for a while now. We had 25,000. We still have a 25,000 square foot warehouse. We have lines of furniture. We have a woodworking metal shop. We had a flower shop. We had a huge overhead. And about a year and a half ago, I was like, we need to start thinking about doing this a different way. So we've been downsizing for a while, and one of the things we did within that is create a more of a virtual situation where we could work from anywhere. And fortunately, we changed over to a system where I can be on the top of a mountain. Someone else could be in San Diego. Someone could be in Dubai, and we all work together the same now. So we really can operate without even meeting together anymore. Oh my God, what was your question?
What are you telling what are you telling your
I'm not
team?
drinking yet, I swear. What are we telling me? But I'm going to right after this. What are we telling people? What?
What are you telling your team? What words of wisdom? What's
Oh,
your
that's where I was
line
going.
to them?
So now we're meeting. Now we're meeting 3 times a week. So I've made a point of telling them exactly what's going on, and I've let them know that PPP is very important for us. I'm trying to put things in place that don't pull the money out of my pocket, that allow me to kick the can down the road even a month or two to look at the situation again. And so I've been very verbal with all of my employees about telling them exactly what I'm doing and what my plan is. And I'm rechecking with them all the time, and telling them. So I'm constantly telling them this is what our plan is. I've got everyone engaged right now because we're creating a couple products that we're going to be launching out very, very soon. In fact, they're already done. We just haven't launched them because right now launching anything would be like, it'd be like that man who hits on the widow at her ex or her late husband's funeral. I don't want to be that person right now. In fact, any messaging going out by any corporation should really be not about caring about your profit, but caring more about everyone else around us. But every single employee that works for me knows exactly the process I'm going through. PPP is important. Everything I told you, like I'm kicking the can down to the end of May to look at the picture again. They all know I'm going to kick down the can at the end of May. They all are part of that process and discussing it. And they know that there could be cuts, there could be furloughs on the way if if things don't go the right way, because I have to. It's a responsibility for them to be able to make the decision. If they want to cut ship or jump ship now and go some other way, I don't blame them. But at least I've given them everything. I'm not hiding anything from my employees.
That's a very Governor Cuomo answer of you. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Speaking of PPP, Jamie, Wild Heart
Yeah.
Events, local wedding planner up here. For those of you in California, so I'm going to pose this question for you guys to answer in the chat. Anyone else, because we recently had the AB5 where we had to turn 1099s to employees, consultants to employees here in California, and there was a transition for that. So Jamie's question is anyone else having trouble with PPP after transition 1099s to employees because of AB5? I personally have not. I was very lucky to get a PPP consultant-based business. So, but you guys jump in here. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that either. I know the PPP process is going really hard. We got pushed out of the first round. And that's because we were sticking a lot of our eggs in the Wells Fargo basket, which I have all of my banking with. The big banks are the ones that seem to be dropping the ball the most, and Wells Fargo is the worst of all of them. In fact, they didn't even release one PPP loan in Wells Fargo at all. So I made the mistake of thinking my bank, who I had all my accounts with, would be the one that pushed me through this. And since then, I've actually gone to a regional bank, City National Bank, that's way more on top of things. And they actually got us into the PPP program and got an acceptance at 9:30 on Thursday. Then at 9:45, they said, sorry, we're out of money. So we're in line for the next route. But it's been a frustrating process. I know that all my 1099 employees don't get included in the calculations. And so we've actually had, anybody that's 1099, we've had to cut or make a calculated effort to keep them on at half salary. Like I have a PR person that's, we may keep on at half salary to do some things for us because we still have a message to get out there. But the employees are the only ones that are going to be considered in the calculation.
I wanted to touch on your, you still have a message to get out there. I think that's so important. And something that we can do right now is people are more virtual. They are looking for ideas. They are bored at home. This is not the time to loosen the reins, so to speak, on the virtual marketing that we have available at our fingertips, right? Would you agree?
I believe that we are uniquely qualified for human engagement, whether it's in person or virtual, because all the tools exist within the special events industry. They just have not been put together in the way that is meaningful if we could not meet face to face. We are now forced into not meeting face to face. So I think all the tools are there, and you just have to look at things differently. And to the person's point, it was like, my clients are not going to want virtual. Yeah, neither am I. What choice do we have? So can we create a solution for our clients that actually allows them to engage? Maybe it's not as expensive, or maybe it is push it down the road for 6 months to a year.
Sorry, but yes, I meant also just the marketing aspect, Instagram, Facebook, looking at your old images, promoting yourself, branding, putting your brand out there is something you should continue doing during this time, more importantly than not, because there's so many eyeballs on social media.
Well, trying to get people out there and look at your brand. If you're trying to do something that's shoving your product down the throat, no one's going to be paying attention to that right now. I've actually told all my employees that I actually just had my guy who does all the Instagram, create 3 or 4 public service messages that are from ALO to them. Be a part of the boat we're all in. Don't try to separate yourself and say, look at me, because that's not going to fall on deaf ears. So my social media right now is about my partner and my dogs, about walking around and finding a beautiful flower, because it's really about the visual for me. So it's putting things up that are visual. And the only time I am still touting my business is on Throwback Thursday or Flashback Friday, because you can go back and say, this is what we did last year. Gosh, I hope we're celebrating again, and not shove your product down the throat.
I know for me personally, I'm part of some wedding because of the blog, because of Santa Barbara Wedding. I'm part of couples, private Facebook groups for couples, and they're looking for inspiration. They're still on the wagon of we're going to get married, whether it's in 18 months or not. So they're still looking in that regard. So not necessarily overselling yourself, but creating inspiration for people.
Mm.
Okay, so this is a very serious question here, David. Armando wants to know what your lemon drop recipe is.
Well, it includes fresh lemons. If you look out the door, you can see outside that window, there's my lemon tree. So you have to have a lemon tree first. And if not, go buy lemons. It is simple syrup, triple sec, vodka or tequila. I prefer tequila and fresh lemons. And then you have to have a sugar rim because the sugar is what makes it great.
Delicious. Maybe you'll have to do it
When
Instagram.
this is all over, I'm going to have a party here and I'm going to make lemon drops for everybody.
We're all invited. Okay, great. Going back to some PPP stuff. So Jamie, I don't know if you saw Emily's response about getting pushback for eligibility on PPP. And then Armando said that PayPal has been super fast on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would never even have thought of going to PayPal.
I applied through Square too, because Square and PayPal, I've heard good things, and I was actually able to upload more documents than just my 2019 tax forms. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, but it's just very irritating that you can't get in front of a human being to explain to them, the transition in the business from these 1099, amounts to payroll.
That's the tough part. And the lesson I've learned from this is I would tell anybody to go to a local bank, go to Santa Barbara Bank, go to some place where the local bankers really are interested in you. Get in their face, get them on the phone because they will talk with you. And then you have someone that's on the inside kind of working for you. My first thought when I saw the PayPal thing was, are you actually talking to somebody or is it an electronic thing? So I was really surprised that that's actually been good.
And a couple thoughts on that. I know that the PUA is coming out. It's going to be rolling out. It's supposed to help small businesses like ours. So that is April 28th. So not that much longer to wait for that. And then I did hear that USA Bank will be getting ready. So you guys can Google USA Bank, ready to accept PPP. So those are some tips that I have.
When Jamie says she's definitely transferring to a local bank, so am I. we actually put a really interesting letter from a customer service standpoint to Wells Fargo that once we get the PPP, if we don't get it from them, they're going to get the letter right away. And all the accounts I have, and I have a substantial amount of accounts, are going to be transferred to this company, this bank that actually got us the PPP, because at least they stepped up. I've been with Wells Fargo since 1989, and they're not stepping up. I mean, 30 years, and they're dropping the ball. That's time to move on. Customer service is everything, right?
For me, I learned that lesson a while ago. I was also with Wells Fargo for a long time, and something happened where I was like, are you kidding me right now? And so I went local, Montecito Bank and Trust here, thankfully, because you have that personal relationships. They happen to be a client of mine. And I walk in, and that was the main thing. I walk in and they know me, versus I would go to Wells Fargo. There'd always be a new person. I was just a new number. It is all about relationships, just like our business. So
banks that's one of the things I talk about when running a business. Whether you like it or not, you have to understand how to talk to the banks, because they can be the lifeline. Right now, it is the lifeline.
So Jessica, okay, so someone asked, did anyone hear back from Wedding Wire / The Knot about their 10 million fund or the vendor or their vendors like 2 weeks or more ago? And Jessica responded, yes, Wedding Wire. So basically Wedding Wire had said that they were offering some, how do they put it, $10 million in fund, which really is just 50% off their marketing agreement, is what we found out.
So you could get 50% off your advertising? Yeah, that's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah, I know there's some people having a hard time, specifically with Wedding Wire and The Knot, and being tied into their contracts.
They'd be smarter to give people like a year or 6 months of free, and that way you'd retain them. But 50% off, right now we're all trying to get, pay for groceries.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? I think someone wants you to do a Tipsy Tuesday one day, and then you can create that recipe, lemon drop recipe for us.
Let's do that.
We'll have a virtual lemon drop session.
Love that.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Any words of wisdom before we call it a day, David? I really appreciate it.
Think about yourself first. Do something that keeps your mind on straight. Do what you have to do to make sure you're safe and you're set up for the long term. And then you can think about everyone else around you. For me, I'm actually looking at the things I've always wanted to do, but didn't because I didn't have enough time. I actually picked up yoga, and I'm doing it online with YouTube, which is great because I don't have to have other people seeing how bad I am in yoga. But I'm now 15 days in, and I'm actually starting to go, this is not bad. And I'm so glad I started it because I never would have started any of these things. So I want to put it in that, oh gosh, maybe someday I'll start this thing. Start something new, learn a new trend, keep your mind healthy, and keep calculating based on everything you're seeing what you want to do and where you want to end up.
Perfect. Great words of wisdom. Anyone who's on here, if you do want the recording, just go ahead and put your email address in the chat and I'll send it to you. And I will close. Again, thank you, David. It's just always great to talk to you and to have everyone on here. And I think we help some people out, just like you said, keep our brains on straight. I'll close by what my dad says. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go
Well, I
ahead.
was going to say that I do. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I think you guys all know how to get a hold of me. Also, please, follow me on the social media handles, Instagram and Facebook. And I'll follow you back because right now it's about connectivity and staying in conversation with everyone that is in the same boat. And I consider us all in that exact same boat right now.
Absolutely. And I'll
Right.
put that information out there for you, David, as well, so people can get in touch with you and follow you. And from the wise words of my father, Franco Felici, who stole them from John Lennon, in the end, everything will be okay. If it's not okay, it's not the end.